Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about attacking Soviet supply lines. So for those of you new to the channel, we're talking about the movie Red Dawn. We're back in the mid-1980s. The Soviets and the Cubans have invaded the United States and are occupying half of it. And we have teenage militias forming behind enemy lines to fight the communists. Okay, so in this video we're focusing on attacking the supply lines. I did a prior video on militia logistics where I talked about the importance of information security and supplies in order to have a militia that's functioning well. Well, in this video we're basically trying to disrupt these three things. We're trying to disrupt the information security and supplies of the Soviets. Okay, so we're going to be focusing. A lot of our focus is going to be on attacking those supply lines because, for one thing, they're probably going to be less armed. Okay, so if we're trying to, attack the Soviet bases, we're probably going to run into a lot of heavy armor, and it's going to be difficult. In the prior video, I explained to you guys how everybody has to eat every day. Okay, so there has to be a constant flow of food to these Soviet bases in order to keep the Soviet soldiers functioning. Okay, so there's going to be a constant supply of food. There will be a constant supply of fuel to keep the Soviet machinery running. Okay, and it is highly likely that you're going to have an entire economy that's going to develop around the this Soviet occupation. Okay, and we saw this, as I mentioned in the previous video. We saw this in France, during World War II, during the German occupation, where basically half the country in France collaborated with the Germans. Now, in many cases, that might have been willingly, because you may have had some people looking for advancement, and in many cases it would have been unwillingly. In some cases it may have been actually forced at gunpoint. At other cases people may have been complying simply because they needed food to eat. Okay, and that was really the only source of food. One of the things to remember, because it's kind of easy to forget this. Socialism is about taking control of the economy and taking control of the food supply as a means of controlling the people. Okay, and we saw this in the 1920s and 1930s in the Soviet Union. Okay, Stalin took control of the food supplies. He took control of the farms. In the Ukraine, prior to the socialists taking over, was basically it was a great source of food. Okay, what happened is, when Stalin took power, he took control of those farms, and in many cases people did resist. Okay, many farmers preferred to destroy their own livestock, destroy their own crops, rather than turn it over to the Soviets. And what happened is the Soviets, Stalin in particular, he ordered a lot of those people arrested and sent off basically to death camps. In many cases, he had them taken to he had taken resistors to areas in Siberia where they were basically starved to death. In many cases, they resorted to cannibalism, and the people that that were left behind, he essentially stripped the land. He really didn't give people enough food to eat. There's many stories where families resorted to killing their youngest child in order to feed the other kids in the family. So there was widespread cannibalism in the Soviet Union, under socialism. So that's a reality, okay, that we're going to be facing. That a lot of civilians will be collaborating, out of sheer necessity to feed their families, so that they don't have to resort to cannibalism. From our perspective, we need to get rid of these Soviets, because in the long term, that's the only solution. We have to get rid of them, and we have to face the reality that we're going to have to fight through the civilian collaborators in order to get to the Soviets. Okay, we need to cut off their supply lines, and it is highly likely that they're going to have civilians running those supply lines. So, in prior videos, I've talked about using the L ambush and the V ambush, where basically, if you have, basically you set up your militiamen in an L pattern, right? And let's say there's a curve in the road over here. Okay, that's a road. What you do is, you set up a roadblock over here so that as this hand so you guys can see. So you set up a roadblock over here, and what happens is as your Soviets come in, right, they're traveling in this direction. The first vehicle is going to come here. Okay, he's going to see the roadblock. He's going to stop. Everybody else is going to stop behind them. Okay, and now basically the militia team is going to open fire, and basically everybody is shooting forwards. Okay, so we have overlapping fields of fire without shooting our own people, because everybody's shooting forward. They're not shooting at each other. Okay, let me clean this up a little bit. So this is a situation where, if this convoy is being driven and operated by civilians, we're going to have a lot of American casualties, which are almost unavoidable. But that's really the only way for us to get the supplies and to keep the Soviets from getting the supplies. And that's just kind of something we have to accept. I mean, if we can't accept this, we can't. We don't belong in the militia, right? We're not going to be able to do this. To do this, that's what it comes down to. There's no way for us to realistically fight the Soviets without fighting the civilian collaborators. There's no way that we're going to be able to get the supplies that we need if the civilian collaborators are the ones that are in charge of those supplies. And it's a given that the Soviets are going to employ civilians to run their logistics, because otherwise they would have no reason to keep them alive and to feed them. Because there will be a breakdown in the free market economy. I mean, that's kind of what socialism is about. It's not going to. You might think, well, why can't people just do business with each other? I mean, the Soviets simply won't allow that. You cannot work around the Soviets. You have to work through them, and only those transactions which they authorized, are going to happen. Okay, so that's the reality situation. We in order for us to fight the Soviets, we have to fight through their civilian collaborators. We have to accept the fact that because we have a 7 to 10 man team, we're not really in a position to take prisoners. Okay, if when we get when we get to the trucks that have the food. If there are wounded people there, we're not going to be able to care for them. Okay, we're not in a position to do that. We're just not going to be able to help people like that. So we have to look at the long-term picture. The long-term picture is that we need to get the Soviets out of the United States. Right, we need to free the United States from this Soviet occupation. That is the long-term picture here. The long-term goal. Okay, now going back to to these counter logistics, because that's what this really is. We're trying to take the Soviet supplies because we need them for ourselves, but at the same time, we're trying to deprive the Soviets of having those supplies. So in effect, we are running counter logistic operations. Okay, because remember what I said in the earlier video. There's 3 components to the logistics: information, security, and supplies. So we're attacking the supply portion here, but we also want to attack the information portion. We want to put as much misinformation out there as possible. We want to feed the Soviets as much false information, because for one thing, as we put out more and more false information, they're going to go out there and try to track it down. Well, now they're using up manpower. They're spreading themselves out thin. That's also creating more opportunities for us to attack them as they spread themselves out thin, trying to take out those information, trying to track down those information sources, trying to figure out, if we're going to be where we said that, so basically, you plan a false attack, and then you kind of set up an attack around that attack point so that when they get into position, you're behind them, ready to attack them. So, but that's really going into really extreme stuff. What you may be able to do is kind of if you have American forces on the other side, right, on the Free America side, you may be able to coordinate an attack so that you feed false information that you will be attacking a certain point on a certain date. Okay, so the Soviets, set up their trap thinking that they're going to be fighting, 10 militia fighters, when instead they end up being attacked by, the whatever's left over of the American army on the other side. Okay, now one thing to understand is that at the point that half the United States has been invaded and is occupied, the United States military has been weakened, okay, because defense is always a little bit stronger, okay. So in order for the Soviets to invade the United States and actually occupy half of it and push the U.S. military that far back, whatever's left over of the U.S. military has been very much weakened, okay. So that's another reality that we have to come to terms with. And what that means is that this war is going to be stretched out. It's not like a situation where, okay, you know what, we can expect that it will be over in a couple of months. So you know what, let's just stay out of the way. And in a couple of months, the U.S. military will take care of this, and all these civilian collaborators can be saved. This is a situation where it's likely that that this war will drag on for many, many years, and without us, right, the militia fighters on the inside, weakening the Soviets and basically forcing them to stretch out their resources, because us doing our counter logistic operations on the Soviets is going to create opportunities possibly for the American military to effectively attack, and we saw this during in France during World War II. The resistance fighters were coordinating operations, with the Allies. They were giving them information. They provided vital information during the invasion of Normandy, and even after the Allies landed in Normandy, they continued to help them. Okay, the same thing happened in Italy. So this is a really important part. So we're not, we may not be operating completely independent. We may also be operating together with the U.S. military on the other side, on the Free America side. Okay, feeding false information to the Soviets is going to be really big, really important, and also by doing all these operations, by attacking the supply lines, it's going to force the Soviets to basically stretch their security forces out, because now they have to expend more of their men, more of their resources to protect those supply lines. So again, we're stretching them out thinner. And so that's basically what I wanted to share with you guys today. In this video, the focus is attacking the Soviet supply lines. Okay, but it's really a counter logistic operation. Okay, where we're trying to do more than just feed ourselves. We're trying to make it difficult for the Soviets to continue to operate efficiently. So if you guys have anything you'd like to add, please do so in the comment section. I love getting comments from you guys. It helps give me new ideas for future videos. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys soon.